Today is June 9th, 2021. My name is John Swain, and I'll be conducting this oral history interview with Marc Christ, a retired Marine and veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. Tonight, Marc will be sharing his experiences during Bravo Company 4th Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalion's 2009 deployment to Hellmann Province, Afghanistan. This interview is pursuant to the practicum requirements for American Military University's Master's Degree in Public History. It will also be submitted to the Veterans History Project of the Library of Congress for the benefit of future generations. Marc, please state your rank, name, and birth date for the record.
First Sergeant Marc W. Christ, 10/31/1975.
So where were you born?
I was born in Towson, Maryland, Greater Baltimore Medical Center. Just opened.
Tell me a little bit about your life before the military.
I grew up in the Towson area. My dad was an engineer. My mom was a school teacher. When I was in the 3rd grade, we moved to Egypt for 3 years, so I lived abroad. That was my first exposure probably to Marines. Aside of my father was a Marine, my grandfather was a Marine, but we hung out with the embassy guys, so I got a real positive view of the Marine Corps. Came home, went to high school, attempted to do an ROTC scholarship to college for NROTC, and that fell through. So I had a teacher that kind of messed that up, and then I decided to join the reserve.
So you first showed interest in the military while you were abroad?
Yeah, when I was little. I mean, every kid played guns, but being around Marines all the time, they were pretty sharp looking.
And that really influenced your decision to join the Marine Corps in particular?
Yeah.
What did your family think about your decision to join?
My mom was a big fan. My dad wanted me to become an officer, so he was the least excited of the two. I thought was odd.
Were you able to choose your job when you joined?
Yeah, I joined the reserve. I went to MEPS. I did the test, and they tried to get me to join the active duty as like SATCOM repair, and I didn't want to join the active duty because that's 4 years. I didn't want to go into the unknown, and basically I kind of played hardball with the recruiter. So I got the 0313 slot because it was only infantry MLS in the state at the time. Of course, they probably lied to me, but that's what I got.
What did you think about becoming an LAV crewman?
I thought it was interesting because I was kind of a military nerd in high school, so I kind of knew what LAVs were. It's like a light cavalry. I thought would be an interesting thing to do. I didn't know where Frederick, Maryland was, so that was an interesting. I got to travel to another part of the state, so I was pretty excited about it.
When did you ship to boot camp?
Memorial Day, 1995.
So what brought you to Bravo Company 4th LAR in particular?
So that was it. That was the unit we went to. I was supposed to go to Combat Engineers as a Humvee driver. I think they wanted me, but I switched over. So I got to show up to Bravo Company, and it also turned out that the company commander was a coworker of my father. So it was an interesting. It was a very eye-opening experience. Was a lot different then than it is now.
What did you think about the unit when you checked in?
I was scared of the active duty guys, the I&I staff. Back then, the I&I staff was 18-year staff sergeants. They were older. They'd been around the block a few times, and they were of an older kind of generation. The company itself was probably at maybe 3/4 strength. So each platoon was at about half strength for vehicles. There was a decent amount of Gulf War vets, but they were all coming out. But my first impression was just total confusion. Like I showed up for drill, they threw me some gear. I went in the back of the vehicle, and I went to. I didn't even know where we were going. I just got in the back of the vehicle and went. And got out. It was dark. We were at Fort AP Hill. They shot. All the vehicles went down during firing for the whole day. So my initial sort of thoughts were like, not these guys don't know what they're doing, but a lot of this stuff doesn't seem to work a lot. And then I got put on road guard for like 40 hours with no relief. So it was an interesting first drill, needless to say.
Tell me a little about your first several years with Bravo Company.
So I was kind of I'm not saying a-hole, but I was kind of like the smart-ass private. I came in as a private. They put me in the platoon, the Cowboy Platoon. I always say of the 3 line platoons, there's the Cowboy Platoon, there's the Retard Platoon, and then there's the Vanilla Platoon. So I was kind of in the Cowboy Platoon. So there were a lot of bravado, a a lot of people that I like that reminded me of my kind of family and my friends, just joking around all the time, trying to outdo each other. We still took Marine Corps seriously, but honestly, the first year or two, I don't say I spent screwing off. I still did my job, but I didn't really start kind of digging in until probably my third year, and then from there, then I leveled out. But I was kind of an a-hole Lance Corporal at heart.
Tell me a little about your personal life while serving with Bravo Company. What was your civilian job, your friends?
I was in and out of school for college. I developed quite a drinking problem in my early 20s, my late teens. So I want to say my personal life was a train wreck till maybe 1990. For 4 or 5 years when I was at Bravo Company. The only reason that I remained sober during the year was to come to drill weekend. Like the reserve actually, the reserve unit served as like my anchor. Like the only thing that kept me remotely near the ground was I had to be sober at drill. I had to be sober for drill. I had to stop partying before drill. That was about it. So the reserve kind of saved my life.
Do you remember where you were on September 11th, 2001?
Yeah, I was in my bed. I was hungover from a night of drinking. So I was playing rugby at the time. And I woke up and my phone was just ringing off the hook. The actual phone, not a cell phone. And my mom called me and said they crashed a plane into the World Trade Center. I didn't think anything of it. I thought like a plane crash, like a Cessna crashed. And then she called me again, like another plane crashed. I'm like, okay, well, let's go see what's going on. And turn on the TV and it's like, oh, this is bad. And then the phone just started ringing off the hook. It was nonstop. People, hey, get ready, we're mobilizing. Turned out most of them were just idiot sergeants and stuff that were just, they got excited, like, this is it, we're going to war. I'm like, okay, we're going to war. And then, when they say stuff gets real, like stuff got real on 9/11. Where you're like, okay, now we're probably going to go somewhere.
Did you notice a difference in the unit, in the training schedule, training pattern?
No, we had a really good battle rhythm at the time. When we were reserved, we would go to the field. We'd shoot. So out of every quarter, we'd go to the field and shoot for one. We do a maneuver drill, and then we do a home site maintenance drill. So our tempo didn't change at all. What did change was wills and power of attorney. So they started doing. They never did that before. Like, get your wills and power of attorney together. They were constantly saying, all right, we're going to go to Afghanistan. And we didn't go to Afghanistan. Okay, we're going to go to Iraq. We're not going to Iraq. The battalion commander came out like 3 or 4 times that year. And usually, as you remember, they show up like when they do the change of command, right? And the changeover. Like the Action Andy or Colonel Pappas came out and saw us on multiple occasions. And other than that, though, we stuck to our bread and butter training schedule.
In 2003, Bravo Company deployed to the Middle East in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Tell me a little bit about your first deployment to Iraq there in 2003.
What's interesting about that deployment is they had basically said, hey, we're going. So in my civilian world, I had disenrolled from school. So I missed a year of school. And then we got this weird window where like, all right, if we don't go now, if we don't mobilize now, we're not going to mobilize till May or June or something. Like, okay. So I went through the effort to re-enroll in school, and then Super Bowl Sunday, actually, as the Buccaneers playing the Raiders, is when I got the call. So when I was a PFC, they do these inspections, right? And the inspections, they're called MORTs, and it's a mobilization exercise. So one of the things they do is they go into like, what's your embark plan? What's your plan for this? So since I was a brand new Marine, they put me down on the embark team as a private, and they put it in a binder just to check a box. So I was a sergeant. I just got promoted to sergeant. So I get the call. I'm like, hey, we're mobilizing. You're on the embark team. You need to come in. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, no, you're on our embark. So you have to come in. It's like, well, okay. So I was like, it's Super Bowl. I'm really drunk. I can't come in yet. I'll be in sometime in the afternoon tomorrow. Like, I was thinking Sergeant Eric Poole is fleet, whatever. He's like, gotta be in tomorrow. Like, I'm not coming in till noon. So we got in, and we basically embarked the whole company. We were loading up the vehicles, Connexes. We took everything we had with us to Iraq. So we did that for basically the first 5 days, and then the company got the order to show up. I think it was like a Monday. So the embark group that was there, everyone went home for a 4-day weekend, and then myself, Jim Santoro, I forget who else, we got screwed and we had to go down to Lejeune. So we had to TT the vehicles down to Lejeune and offload them. So essentially, the pre-workout, I'd worked the whole time, and I got home for like 5 hours before I had to check in the next day. It was pretty organized. And we actually, kind of funny story, when we took the vehicles down to Morehead City to load onto ships, we got there at night, and I guess the LSB had not split their shifts properly, so there was no adults that night at the docks. So there was like some corporal in charge, and it was total pandemonium. But we literally, through the will of Gunny Solomons, or the company Gunny at the time, we started loading our vehicles on the wrong ship. And then they caught us that morning. So as the shift changed over, it's like there's a way they load these ships apparently. Like everything goes where they say it goes. You just can't go willy-nilly driving vehicles on there. So we had to offload them and then leave them parked in the parking lot for like 2 more weeks. So they went on in the... when we mobilized, we had to get new ID cards. Back then, you had reserve ID cards, so it took us a week to get our ID cards. And we basically, for a week, we just worked on ID cards, did some classes. Then we went to Camp Lejeune. It was a blizzard, I think, when we left. Like it snowed like all get out. We got to Camp Lejeune. We loaded our vehicles up. We had our weapons. We had our gas masks, and then we sat at Camp Lejeune for like 2 weeks. And the only training we did at Lejeune was some NBC like hip pocket training, because we didn't know when we were leaving. So we couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't get training areas. So we basically just sat in Second LAR's barracks, right? And I think after 2 weeks, they finally decided to let us out, like to give us some liberty, because they just called the DAS. The DAS said, "Hey, you've got your window's closed for another 36 hours." So they let everybody go, and like 20 minutes after everyone left, they called up and said, "Your flight window's in 8 hours." So we missed our first flight to Iraq, or Kuwait. When we get to Kuwait, all our stuff was still on ships. We showed up. I don't think 3rd LAR was expecting us. I don't think the active duty was expecting us, any of the reserve units that were there. So we had to, we're kind of like the bastard children of 3rd LAR. And then our vehicles showed up, and they didn't have enough gear for everybody, so they had to kind of, like ammo and certain things. They had some vehicles from the Maritime Position, MPF stuff. So we got our stuff, and then 3rd LAR wasn't convinced that we could operate with them. So we had to go out to a range and show them that we could shoot and not kill ourselves, which was kind of a proud moment for us. Like our mortar section was always really good, but we had just come off like a 2.5-year cycle of gunnery, where we had really gone from kind of stupid to competent in like 2 years. So I was very proud of that. So they said, "All right, you guys can shoot, you can do whatever. You're good." So we did. We got the big order. We got the big giant order and the big terrain model.
What was your billet at the time?
I was the company reserve master gunner, so I was in headquarters platoon. They did an interesting thing where they kept. We had 2 XOs, we had 2 majors, so they were supposed to get rid of one, or he was supposed to move. And I believe at the time our first sergeant told him he couldn't move, so they made him deploy with us. Great officer, Major Dave Duhamel. So I got lucky serving with him, but I would have probably had my own vehicle. I should have gone to a line platoon, but they kept me in headquarters. So, I kind of oversaw the gunnery training and tactics and stuff. And same deal, they told us we weren't doing much training, so we didn't really have much time. We didn't have anything to train with, and we were in the middle of the desert. So at the end, they got us fried chicken, they got us KFC one night, and hey, yeah, tomorrow's a day off, we're going to play rugby. And then they woke us up at like 4 in the morning, like, "Hey, we got to move the TAA." I think it was FANG. I forget what it was called. But they moved us out in the middle of the night, and we sat in a line in the desert for like a day. And then we went in to go to the breach, and I think an A-10 had lit up an LAV or done something, so they called off like the breach. So everybody got all worked up to go to the breach, and then it came over the radio. I just remember Major Duhamel gave us this great speech, like, "This is it, men, we're going to war, yada, yada, yada." And then the call came over battalion, like, "Hey, back to assembly area," whatever. We had to wait till tomorrow. They have IFF issues. So like the anticlimax when we crossed the breach was like the next morning, and then the rest of it was just what it was.
What were some of the operations you went on, or was it just kind of a continuous?
We did the invasion, and then we did some LAR stuff like right at the beginning. We did route reconnaissance, which is really cool actually having to do it for real. So we had engineers attached. So basically the 3 highways that ran up to Baghdad, as they got closer to Kuwait, I think 2 of them, I think we're on 8, I forget what highway it was, but it was unfinished. So we had to do navigability, like basic, what LAR does, like, hey, can we take LVSRs, can we take LVSs and trucks and all that stuff up there. And then after probably the 3rd day, it just developed into this, like, stay on the roads. Like, we were setting up screen lines like 100 feet from the main body. Like, we weren't, I mean, it came apparent, at least to me, and like, we didn't really know what was going on. It was just, they're keeping everybody together as regiments, and we're staying close to the road. But after, I think about a week, Hilton probably talked about it, they sent us to do, so they bypassed, I think, Nasiriyah, because all the stuff, Nasiriyah popped off, so we were going to bypass Nasiriyah. And at like 1800, now it's probably like 1500, it was starting to get dusk. We get a frago from battalion, like, hey, there's an armored brigade moving from east to west across the Euphrates, set up a battle position in vicinity of whatever northing. Like, okay. And there's no air support. Basically, we're going up as an organic LAR battalion, which means you got 81 millimeter mortars and tow missiles. Like, you don't want to tangle with an armored brigade because you're just going to get shellacked. I just remember, up to that point, during the invasion, we were doing like super good trash discipline, keeping all the trash in the vehicles, doing trash pickups. And I remember we're on a herringbone on the side of the road where you're, like this for air attack. And it was getting dark. And I had this VC was next to me, like, sir, did they say we have no air support? It's like, nope, we don't have any artillery. They're like, nope, if we need it, it'll be there. I'm like, all right, we're gonna get shellacked, sir. And he's like, first, no, we're not. We're gonna be fine. I'm like, okay. And I remember popping up, and I had like this little trash thing next to me. I got up and I turned out of the turret and threw it over the side, and like, so it's, there's like 50 LAVs all down the road, and everybody's doing the same thing. Everybody's like throwing their trash out on the ground, like waving goodbye to each other. Like, people that weren't like, we're like, this is where I'm probably gonna die. Like, it was this great sort of like Zulu Dawn moment where we're just waving at everybody. It's like, this is it. So that made some like National Geographic thing. So we sprung an ambush prematurely. They called in like God knows how much air support. But I mean, basically, you had a battalion online, like on this road. It was a whole battalion. So, like, a unit took fire. The roads were crisscrossed. There was friendly fire coming. I mean, how no one really died that night is beyond me. But I was monitoring battalion TAC and company TAC, so I could hear what was going on, and you could hear, countermanding information, like, don't fire mortars, fire mortars. Need illumination mission, no one fire illumination mission. Someone fires a loom, and they're calling it as enemy firing a loom. It just went on, and then it just ended. And after that, we kept pushing up the highway. We took part in this, like, the 70-kilometer feint, where we drove almost to Baghdad and came back, which was really depressing, because we would clear map sheets as you're going up the road. Once you're done a map sheet, you throw it somewhere else. Like, we only got 9 more map sheets to Baghdad, and we had to find them all. And then we got in a couple firefights at the, like, clover leaves. They'd pop us out, and then, again, luckily the Iraqis can't shoot.
Is this mostly, dismounted infantry?
No, this was like attacking us. Yeah, so they would bust these dudes in, probably Fedayeen guys. They would bust them in, so we would probably set up, and then there were IV lines. We didn't have OPs set super far out, right? So they would just bust people in like a mile down the road, and they would come out. Luckily, we had a Arabic interpreter, a Marine. I think I don't know what he does now, but he spoke like 7 languages, and Arabic was one of them. So someone drove up to our vehicle checkpoint and said, I need to talk to somebody. You guys are about to get attacked. So we got the interpreter to come up. His name was Kenny. And the guy came in. He's like, I want you to frisk me and do all this stuff. And he came in and was like, look, across the street there, they just dropped off a bus. There's a bunch of guys waiting to ambush if you go down this road. So like, holy shit. All right, we got good intel. We called in the company. And then they basically, for some reason, decided to drive through the prospective kill zone. They sent a platoon through the kill zone, which they did. And then that platoon the lead driver decided to stop in the middle of the kill zone for like 5 seconds. So they cleared the kill zone, and then they sent another platoon right to the same kill zone, and then headquarters pushed up to cover the withdrawal. We hit them a little bit on the withdrawal, but it was like overall sense from that whole deployment was just God was on our side, or horrible training the Iraqis. Because like if you'd taken a Marine infantry squad with SMAWs or laws and you set them up 75 meters on the side of a road with vehicles driving down at 12 miles an hour, like you'd just be Schwack City. But for some reason, God was on with us that day. But that was pretty much, we got to Baghdad. We set up, I think, the northeast. We cordoned off the northeast, set up the VCP. We sent a platoon up to Tikrit. And then we went, when they got back, we went to the Saudi border because they thought they were sending Wahhabists into Iraq. And then we got the word we were staying in Iraq for a long time. So morale plummeted. And then we paid the Iraqi army. We were a quick reaction force. We lost a Marine on a QRF mission. First platoon did. But generally, yeah, then it just dragged on to the end. So when we got back from 03, it was soul crushing. Because basically you get into that situation. We had a first sergeant that just was horrible, crushed morale. We had some issues, some of the staff NCOs. People just put their heads in the sand for the most part, and you've probably seen it before. People put their heads in the sand. The Marines just take it on the face the whole time, and they get home and they're like, screw this, I'm leaving. So we came back, we lost like 80, 90, it was like 80 Marines, like gone like that. It's pretty crazy.
How long were you in Iraq the first time?
So we were there from like February to September, so that's pretty decent, about 7-8 months.
And how did your first deployment affect or change you?
I felt like I steeled myself a lot. My outlook, I never really had like a hoorah Marine Corps, like we're invincible. Like I always kind of prided myself on objectively, grading, right? So a lot of guys came back, and I mean, it was different times. Like we won, George Bush had the flight suit, we won, and a lot of guys just really bought into it. Like we did this great job, and I looked at it like, yeah, we went over there and we fought a surrendering force. We had some minor engagements, but I mean, we weren't tested in battle. In LAR, no, some units were infantry units, like in like Diwania, and they fought in the cities. But even there, like you have air supremacy, you have firepower, you have every level of supremacy. So like even if you screwed up, odds are you're going to be okay. So I really felt when we got home, as the sergeant, as a master gunner, I was very concerned with the proficiency level of the company, because I knew we were going to go back. Like they'd already said they're going to send the first OEF rotation was 1st Marine Division. They were going back. Like, okay, well, this ain't over. We're going to go back. So my initial sort of thing was starting to train all these people again, all brand new people.
And were you able to pass on the lessons you learned in Iraq and that deployment to the junior Marines?
I think we did, but I think the problem is I felt like the lessons I learned, for me, like I thought that the lessons learned that were theater specific shouldn't really be hit on until you're mobilizing, right? So the basics always apply: cover, concealment, fire maneuver, how to talk, right? Knowing how to read a map, knowing how to navigate. These things they're universal across the board. If you start applying like SASO type coin things that you learn in Iraq while you're training during the year, you basically are letting Marines down, because all that stuff is already covered in Small Wars Manual and stuff. So, there were certain lessons learned, but not to the point where it was institutional. It was, like I really felt the last half of the deployment was really not good for proficiency. The missions we were doing were kind of all oddball, show of force, stuff. And really some of the stuff we did, ECPs, VCPs, we didn't probably do properly, because a lot of them were just pull people over by the side of the road. We had engineers set up ECPs and stuff, but as far as how it applied to the next deployment, really didn't. Other than learn your stuff, like be good at your job, because we had no workup. Like, you could be on a plane tomorrow, dude. So learn your stuff. You probably heard that when I was your platoon sergeant. Like, give me on a plane tomorrow. So do you feel comfortable with what you know? Then get on it.
When did you first hear that you'd be going back to Iraq? When was it certain?
2000. I'm gonna say probably like the summer of 05, maybe summer of 05, fall of 05. So it's probably about 8 or 10 months before we mobilized. They were telling us we were going to go to Horn of Africa, I think. And then we got the choice, not the choice, but the two options were Horn of Africa and small craft. So, and we got like a little flyer. We got like a, what do you call it? Like a little pamphlet thing. This is what a boat, like CERC is. This is what Iraq is. The small unit river craft, the river and assault craft. This is what they do. And so everybody kind of was like, man, I'd rather do small craft than sit in the Horn of Africa and do whatever the hell they did over there.
So what was your mission going to be? What did they tell you your mission was going to be your
So,
second time in Iraq?
Originally, it was the dam support unit. I think we did a clever thing where we renamed the unit because no one knew what the hell it was. So initially, I think it was called the dam support unit. And what they did is their base mission was to provide security for the dam, right? So when small craft, I think, had that mission initially. So small craft came in 04. They were patrolling the Euphrates River. They're very kinetic when they were there. They were down at Ramadi. They were Fallujah in the water. So they were very get out and go. When they disbanded small craft company because those guys are like maniacs. So they kind of peeved the Marine General Second Marine Division. So they kind of got rid of them. They were a division asset. So then I think the DSU-1 stayed close to the dam. So they basically turned it over, I think, to them. And then by the time DSU-2 came in, they had a training cadre. So they expanded their scope a little bit where they'd operate. And by the time we came in, since we had an LED background, we really expanded the scope of what it was. So we had a base mission, but really we provided full spectrum counterinsurgency operations with the Western Euphrates River Valley. And so we did sweeps, we did interdiction, we did support missions, regular patrols like cops, pull people over. So it was pretty cool.
Did you have an option to go on this deployment?
Yes. So I think there was a force cap of like 100, and we had enough because a small craft company. The small craft company is really big, but the way the DSU would have been like one det of a small craft company. So you had, basically take away headquarters platoon, you take away most of your weapons platoon. So it's probably about 90, 100 guys and gals at a time. So we had options if you wanted to go or not. For the most part, the A gamers all went, which was nice. Some of the guys chose not to. There wasn't really any bad blood if they didn't go. People, whatever. We had a lot of guys who were short timers, so they were like, screw it, I'm getting out.
How old were you at the time?
I was 28, I think.
What was your rank and billet?
I was still a sergeant. I was a platoon commander. So when I got back, I was still the master gunner, the reserve master gunner, because the active duty guy was a little, squirrely, needed some help. But I basically was a platoon commander for a majority of the time between OIF 1 and OIF 2. And I was going to be the platoon commander for the ground combat element, and then we got a lieutenant in who took over, and I bumped over to be the platoon sergeant for 2nd platoon in the boats. And so I think I was 28 or 29.
How did you feel going back to war after having already been once?
I'm sure the other guys said this. It's kind of creepy. It's like, you ever have boot camp dreams? Like sometimes for the future generations, sometimes you have dreams where you're back at like boot camp again, or you're back somewhere, and it's like surreal because you're there, but you've already been there. When we got to Iraq, it was almost the same, just disbelief. Like even though we'd done like a 4.5 month workup, like getting on the plane, it's like, I can't believe we're going back. I can't believe I'm doing this. Like I didn't have to go. I can't believe I'm doing this. And then just, you get in Kuwait again, and it's like, oh, that's the smell. And then you get to Al Asad, which wasn't there at the time, and you're at Al Asad for a couple of days. And you're like, oh wow, they got all this stuff. And then we landed at the dam at night at like 11 o'clock at night. It's pitch black, coming off the back of a 53, and then rotor wash blew all of my papers everywhere. Like it was like the Keystone Cops, and then like I didn't sleep for 3 days when we got there, because I didn't have a place to sleep. I remember like the first week, I'm like, what am I doing? I can't believe I'm back here again doing this. And yeah, it was good times.
How were y'all trained prior to the 2007 deployment?
So we did, I'll be honest with you, the best sustained training the company did was between OAF 1 and OAF 6.1. We put the company through, we actually went from not combat ready coming home. They actually told us we were supposed to go on a UDP to Okinawa. So we got back, our first drill was, I think, January. I had stayed on the I&I staff, so I was the master gunner. So we got word from division or battalion, like, hey, 3rd LAR is having an issue with Charlie Company, 3rd LAR, we need somebody to do a UDP. And you're the whatever, we were usually the most ready company in the battalion. So we had to get the company from 0 to fully qualified in like 4 months. So that's what I spent my first 4 months, was lining up gunnery in 4 months, which we qualified a company, which is a big deal. One of my crowning achievements, I think. But then they said, hey, we don't need to go. So we sort of set a tempo of getting good at the basic things, working on continuing actions, and just building on, picking out who the A gamers were, training the trainer stuff. So we really started laying the foundation for the future. We were really firing on all cylinders by the time we got word for the boats, and then they took the boats or the vehicles away, sent all of our stuff to Syracuse and North Carolina or South Carolina. So when we did the workup, they sent he's a warrant officer now, Steve Rose, went down for the workup for the unit that we were going to rip out with. He came back, had a bunch of great gouge. We had Marines that knew what they were doing. We sent Marines to urban instructors course. By then I've been doing a lot of gunnery, a lot of tactics instruction. We had a good amount of knowledge. We went down there. We got 4.5 months to work up. We trained hard. We by the time we got to Iraq, we were exhausted, but we felt we were good, ironically, in everything but the boats, because we didn't get a lot of boat time. But we felt we had our processes down, tactics wise. We were really tight on that deployment. Absolutely.
Who were some of your closest friends in the unit?
Steve Rose, I still talk to him, Warrant Officer 4. Jim Santoro, he was one of my squad leaders. Eric Miller, I'd served with Eric forever. We were still friends. We worked kind of together. Timmy Newkirk, at the time wasn't my friend, but he became my platoon commander. He's a lieutenant colonel now, I think, but we became really close. A bunch of goofballs, man. I felt really close to my platoon. Mike Pickett, John Passwaters. They were juniors. I think Passwaters just got promoted to corporal. Pickett just got promoted to sergeant. So they were junior to me, but they were, I consider those guys my friends. Hanji Manoli, you served with, this tight group, good guys.
Did you have any mentors in the unit?
We had all the staff NCOs that came in: Hilton, Galrizzo, Bowers, Wertman. They were, when I came in, that's the other thing I picked up right away, is like there's 4 guys that are running the show. Like you picked out who the A gamers were, and like you could tell those guys did like everything. And then we had this I&I guy named Russell Strack. He retired as sergeant major. He was probably the most influential one on me, because he hated the reserve, just hated us a lot. And he was a funny guy, crazy, knew a ton of stuff. And he was with us for 3 years, and he's really the guy that brought about the progression that I feel like when I was there, the company had been spinning its wheels for a while, training wise, when he came in, because he cared about, he might not like the reserve, but he cared about training Marines, and he took it, and it rubbed off on a lot of people, and he gave us room to run with. And then he left, but he really shaped probably the next 10 years of the company. Whether he knew it or not, he had a really big impact.
Tell me a little about the DSU deployment.
It was they split the company up. They had a platoon in Ramadi. They had a platoon up where we were, or 2 platoons. Different missions, different op tempos, different headquarters. They worked with the Army, we worked with the Marines. It was intense for the first 2.5 months till the surge started. We got lucky. I want to say in the first 2 months, we got like 18 firefights. it was like every time, like people were dying, not our people. We were getting lucky because the Iraqis couldn't shoot, but we were going to River City like every day. Like it was really hot in the Haditha. They were blowing up vehicles left and right. Up in Anna, where 2nd LAR was, there was this one, I think it was Apache company. Like everywhere they went, they were just getting torn. Not, they were losing Marines. Al Qaim was getting hit up there. So it was. I want to say at the height of the insurgency. There was definitely a sense that we were going to lose a lot of people. No one really brought it up, but it was the amount that we've been shot at. The amount of stuff when you're on a boat and you can literally see like tracers coming across at like kneecap level, or RPGs skipping off the water, like and you drive through it returning fire. Like you're like, all right, here, like it's that feeling you get. You just kind of freeze your body and like, all right, let's see if we're gonna die here in the next 9 seconds. All right, we're alive, and it's just amazing how many rounds would ding off the side of the boat. We had a steep learning curve when we got there. I think we were wound a little bit too tight. We were there's a mental aspect to doing these deployments where if you get people too scared of stuff, they're gonna do things a little bit different because their brain is going into like 6 gears higher than it needs to be. So I think the first probably 6 or 7 days we were there, that mentality, that sort of, everybody was holding on so tight that you couldn't, everything was bad, like the scariest I ever was on that deployment, not a single shot was fired, but they told us to go down and do a riverine reconnaissance during the day in the town of Haditha, right? So Haditha would be on the west side of the Euphrates River. There was this bridge, they called the Verrazano Bridge, named all the bridge, I think, after New York bridges. And it had been blown up, so there was a big section. What was missing was all girt up, and there was an island in between. And they wanted us to go down and see if there was a way around. Unbeknownst to us, the other units had gone down. It's like, it's shallow, you can't get in there. So we went down, and Christ, it was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And the boat got stuck. And the thing is, the boat gets stuck down there, like till the water level comes up, you can't call, AAA to come get you. You're stuck in the boat, right? Well, if you're stuck in a boat, and there's literally the entire city of Haditha is around you, people stop and say, what are these idiots doing in boats, right? So then, you see a bunch of people are stopping what they're doing, they're watching it, because it's an hour, right? So we freaked out. We're like, holy Jesus, we're all going to die. Sniper, and there was an active Czechian sniper he killed about 4 Marines at that point. We're like, oh, we're all going to fucking die. We're all going to die. And at one point, our boat got stuck, got turned around the water, so now we're facing, our backs are now to where the enemy is. And it went for like 45 minutes. We're calling for help, trying to get Amtrak done. We don't know how we're not dragging it out. We're not walking out of the river. And we were just so, our headspace was that everyone's trying to kill us at all times, which you should kind of have that headspace, but not like, not everybody's going to kill you, right? So we, flipped out. And then once we got into like a good battle rhythm, we really did well, I think. Had a lot of momentum coming back. It was good. It was a good deployment.
Does anything stand out to you? Any event or?
Yeah, we sent a platoon out to go to the Syrian border just to get there first week or two, and they got hit really hard, and I think because of poor planning, that's where we took our only real wounded Marine was there. They just didn't have the right comm set up. They couldn't call for help to the right places, so they did everything on their own. But as we patrolled up there later, we were talking to units like, oh, we saw that. Yeah, we were out there in a Humvee. We tried to get you on the radio, couldn't get you. But as we were going up there, we were told, this is it. There's no one between you and Al Qaim. Or once you leave 2nd LAR, there's no one, right? Nothing. And it turns out, bumping into people, like, oh yeah, we were there, we saw you. And that was a big deal because that was, I think the company command did not like our platoon at the time. Personal reasons kind of stuff. Like I said, you have the Cowboy Platoon, you have the Vanilla Platoon. We were the Vanilla Platoon, we didn't yell a lot, but we weren't flashy. I think they preferred the flashy guys. So, our guys took them up there, did well under fire, came back, and that kind of subsided, but Marines handled themselves well. And then, we pushed on. My boat got hit by a rocket one day, which is pretty cool. That stands out especially. How close we would come to getting killed, was, you could literally, there were times when you would get shot at, right? And then you get done. I remember my platoon commander, we were taking sniper fire. We're supporting this infantry company on the river. And we're literally just driving like slow circles up and down. And we're just getting shot at, like snipers are shooting at us. Poof, poof. And you can hear the rounds, like they're through your CVC helmet. They're snap really loud and your ears ring. It's like, it's close, you know. And we get done, and we had to sit and hold and sit and hold and sit and hold. And then on the way back, we got like big complex ambush. And you get back, and I was talking to my platoon commander and another Boeing, sir, this is getting out of hand, you know, we're going to die. He's like, it's like, tough guy, right? It's fine, right? I'm like, yeah. Not fine, sir. I mean, look at that bullet hole right there. He's like, what about it? I'm like, well, where do you think that came from? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, well, I did urban warfare school, and one way you can do counter sniping is you stick like a pencil in the bullet hole, and it gives you direction of fire. So I took a piece of 550 cord, and I extended the direction of fire, and the round literally went in between, like at the drivers here, and we went right between them. Like, that's how close he came to getting shot by a sniper. I remember his face just gave me that look. God bless America.
Were you close with David Smith during the deployment? Did you know him, work with him?
Yeah, he was an interesting kid because he was Frederick kid. He was like super rapper when he first came in the unit. He was in my platoon for about a year, and he was on weight control, and he was into rap music. I guess he had cornrows before right? And good kid though, good kid. Loved the Marines, you know. We just were working on his weight. Just, you know, he was like, you pick the kids when they're new. The first thing you look for is who wants to be there. Like that's tier 1, like that, or tier 2. Like average kid, tier 1, tier 2 is the kid that likes being a Marine, takes pride in it, likes to get involved. Like that's tier 2. He was a tier 2 guy right off the bat. Worked on his weight. He had a little funny story. He so like a lot of boots do this thing with the knife. They get the big pig sticker knife. They put it upside down on their gear. Everyone does it because you're a boot. That's what you do. And he was my driver. It's like, hey man, take that off your deuce gear. You're gonna hurt yourself. He's like, what if I need it? I'm like, well, you're not gonna need it because you're driving, and you're not gonna need a knife that big. I was like, you're probably gonna just cut yourself with it really bad. And he's like, this whole kind of butt hurt thing. Puts his knife away. So we're in the field. It's like the first. I'm only there for like day and a half, 2 days field drill, and my gunner comes over. He's like, hey, Sergeant Christ, Smith cut his hand really bad. I was like, what did he cut the shit out of his hand, down his bone? Like, what did you do? I was opening an MRA. Like, you're not allowed to have knives. That's it. Take your knife and put it away. And then he went to ECU. We had another Marine named Rich Shope went to ECU. Talked him into going to ECU, right? So he goes to ECU, and over the course of him being at East Carolina University, he now becomes a cowboy. And he got in like really good shape. He played lacrosse down there, and then we went to Boston Urban Warfare Instructors course together. Or no, we went to EMP, Enhanced Marksmanship Program Instructors course together. And I'm like, man, he's getting locked on. He's now like tier 3. He's going to be a good kid. And then he went to first platoon. I went down. And then, yeah, I didn't see him at all. Really, I saw him for like 4 days during the deployment. But yeah, he was. I worked with him a lot when he was younger. Good kid.
So when did you come home from Iraq the second time?
We came home like April, May. We got home early. They ripped out early because the Navy came to relieve us. So I think we were like 6.5 months. We did a short one for that one, and that was, coming home. We did a rip out with the Navy. Like the first time we came home, we just left. Second time we came home, we had to rip out the Navy, which was fascinating to see how the Navy operates. Sat in Kuwait for a week or two, came home, and then hung out with my wife. My now wife got engaged, and I was right back on active duty, working again for the training shop.
Did you feel you'd accomplished your mission in Iraq?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have a mission, so we kicked ass. Like in comparison, we did a really good job. General Clarity, who at the time was RCT, I think 7 commander. He came in on the rip because the regiments rip out, right? So the unit stays saying the regimental commander rips out. He came out, and cool thing about that guy is he was our battalion commander in 03, 3rd LAR battalion commander. So he remembered. It was funny because he came to our birthday ball the year after we got back. Great guy, super awesome, great battalion commander. I think he's a great regimental commander, probably a great division commander. But he came out and he remembered me and Workman. Like, not, no joke. Like, he really knew Rob for a while. They would always bump into each other. It's because he remembered Easy Company. We were called Easy Company in OIF. And so we did our rip with them. We showed them what we did, and the Navy was there. And then he basically goes, and the Navy's like, all right, so this is what you're going to do for me. And the Navy's like, no, we're not going to do that. We're only going to secure the dam, patrol the lake. And he's like, well, you guys are worthless, whatever he said. And then he was a little upset that we were leaving. And I think the big mistake the Marine Corps made was getting rid of small craft. One of the many big mistakes they made, but it's really an interesting unit. It's really, especially in littorals, to get rid of it and then they're all littorals. So, not the first time they've done anything stupid. So,
did you ever know, what ever became of, that he hit the dam there and that AO?
When we left, when we were there for the awakening, so like that AO went from hot to cold quick. Like they basically would burn in the cities. They sent in the cops. Once at that time, that was 2006, they had basically, a lot of the Anbar province were kicking out the Al-Qaeda and Iraq people. They were like, we've had enough of you people, So when we left, it was, really the Iraqis were taking hold, the Navy was there, the Marine Corps still had a presence, and then I think, was it 2012 or 13, ISIS? Whenever ISIS was, I think they took most of the A over again. So that was a little disconcerting. Spent a lot of time down there. Actually saw the Euphrates River run dry. They had to shut the dam down a couple times. It's pretty cool.
So how were you welcomed back home once you got back from Iraq there in 2007?
It was a good time. We came home. I think they had a DJ. We came home the first time. We went to Lejeune for a while. And we came home, so it was disjointed. Families came down to Lejeune to see us, and then we went home. The hurricane hit, so we got a 96 back in Maryland. That was a train wreck. It was a great time. We came home from the second one. We were at Lejeune for a little bit. We came home. People came down. It was a good welcome home. We had a lot of Marines that stayed back that we had to reintegrate with, which was interesting.
Did you have any encounters with people who were protesting the war?
No, actually, the only encounters I've ever had, we buried a Marine after I got back. No, before we went in 2006, we buried a Marine, and it was those, what do you call it, the weirdos from Kansas, Westboro Baptist Church were there, and that was just completely awkward, and there was a bunch of big motorcycle people that were going to kill him, so that was cool. I would say, not protest, but I would say in my run-ins out in town over the years, there was a decent amount of people that would, no offense, but let me talk about U.S. foreign policy with you and, that stuff. But I only have ever saw a real protester, like a real one.
So what does your life look like, over the next couple of years going on through early 2009, your family situation, civilian job?
My wife and I, we're going to get married. We broke up. I was testing vehicles at Aberdeen. I'd gone back to school finally to get my degree. And I was working in training for a while. I want to say I got a little bit burned out, just fighting an uphill battle. They started integrating the I&I billets, and instead of getting these old wise guys, we get these young they were young, and they also were like, I'm the smartest guy in the room, and then they just wanted to change everything, and they didn't understand institutional learning. They didn't understand that, look, this is an active duty unit. We do this shit 1 weekend a month. You can't do one on the right mind, right? Like, if you think reservists can be as proficient as an active duty unit by doing 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year, you're dumb, right? Otherwise, why would you have an active duty if you could do it? You could train active duty unit in 30 days, So we had a lot of this going on. We had a lot of, this isn't how this is done. We're doing this the right way. And all right, well, you can do that. They also didn't have vehicles, so we couldn't train for about a year and a half. And I want to say the command at the company level was atrocious and just caused, so we had this great nucleus of future leaders of the company, right? Like when I showed up, there was Hilton, Wertman, Galrizzo, Bowers, a couple other guys, maybe some good sergeants. And then they all left, Mace, except for Hilton. He stuck around. And the next crop of Marines between 2006 and 2007, I was the last airbender. That was just me. Everybody's had enough, said screw this, I'm getting out. The guys that I had been mentoring personally said, F this, I'm leaving. The Marines that Gunny Miller, Eric Miller was mentoring. I said, F this, I'm leaving. Warrant Officer Rose got a warrant. Jim Santoro left. So it was like, and you were there for that. You were spinning wheels. Like the CO we didn't go to the field for 13 months. When we did go to the field, it was next door. Everything turned into a fob. 52-page op orders. It was just atrocious. Like, look, they just need to drive around, shoot things, and talk on the radios. That's all we need. Let's just work on that before we build a fob and do all this dumb stuff. So by the time we were leaning into the deployment, I'd say we lost a good amount of good Marines. We weren't really training a lot. And we did train. We did a battalion AT where we had 15 training events and 13 training days. So Marines really didn't get trained the way they should have out there. They were run ragged. And we got the word to go we were going to Afghanistan. It was like, and the same deal, like they told people that they didn't have to go. I didn't have to go. And a lot of the vets would talk about it. And some of the guys that had just done OIF 2 or 6.1 were like, yeah, we'll go. And it's like, steal your, easy up there, Hoss. Like, this isn't going to be the same, thing. They weren't telling us what was going on over there. For reserve unit to do 3 deployments in 6 years, it's a lot. And that wasn't just us. That was every company in the battalion. This would be their 3rd one that had gone. So they cycled through. And apparently I guess they do these force planning meetings. Either the 4th Marine Division Commanding General, Mar Res Commanding General, essentially said, this is it. Either you get reservists, this is it. You either get them all now or you don't get any. We can't, because basically all these deployments over the past 7 years had just crushed the reserve. And in fact, in the active duty, they crushed the active duty too. A lot of good guys got out. They lost a ton of proficiency in artillery. And the active duty was hurting too. So, this was just these endless wars. So when we finally got the word to go, I had an emergency appendectomy. I thought I had a really bad hangover. Turned out my appendix burst, I almost died. So I had a hernia surgery. Surgery's there, appendix, no big deal. They fixed my umbilical hernia. That was in June. And I was on a 25-pound lifting restriction for 6 months. So I went on disability for work, so I couldn't work where I work. And I basically spent the next 2 months, drinking a lot, playing Lego Indiana Jones, and binge watching The Entourage, which is great. I shouldn't have gone on the deployment because I literally was not supposed to go because I had open stomach surgery. And then we got the MOB order, the MOR admin came out, and I'd broken up with my wife, had this big breakup and all, and I bumped into one of her friends, and my wife had just reached out to me, my ex-wife. She was already engaged with somebody else, and there's a lot of stuff. My personal life, I wouldn't say it was a mess, but it was pretty close to it, and I didn't know what to do. And then I still had some Marines I cared about in the unit. I was like, I gotta go. Pass Waters, I gotta get. Pass Waters is going. I gotta go. Like Hangman's going. I gotta. That stupid belief you have that you can impact stuff. But I definitely was not. I don't think my headspace was too good for number 3.
So how else did you feel, going into your 3rd time overseas?
The 3rd time was the most, I don't want to say pessimistic, like super pragmatic, but I just did not have a good vibe from the company. I really kept telling myself, we're going to get 4 months to work up. We'll do just like we did at DSU. We got 4 months as an eternity for reserve unit. I know how this works. And then we got mobilized. I still couldn't, you remember that, I couldn't lift anything. People had to carry my bags. I couldn't wear body armor. Physically I was in probably the worst shape of my life, but I'm so egotistical. I feel like even me at 30% is pretty awesome. So I figured I had to go, had to do one for the team. And when we got to the workup in Pendleton, it became painfully obvious that we weren't prepping for war. Whatever we were doing wasn't adequate for what we wanted to do.
Did going to Afghanistan feel different than going to Iraq, or training or preparing yourself?
I felt personally like I still steel myself very well for that kind of stuff, but I just felt like there was a very strong sense like we were going on some trip, like we're going on safari. You know what I mean? Like it was like, I don't know, the go get 'em like combat mentality wasn't there. It was hard to get that into people's heads. Like I felt it wasn't at the battalion. I felt like at the company it wasn't there so much. I think we had a lot of, at that point, I think we had a lot of like people that wanted to have like this horrible like combat experience. Like they want, you know what I mean? It's like like a morbid sort of curiosity, like that. Oh, like, this is going to be like horrible and people are going to die and stuff. It's like, well, why don't we, I think it was abandoned. What was it? Flags of Iwo Jima, or one of these books I read about World War II. It's like if you go into combat thinking you're going to die, the odds of you dying like increase like 50-fold, right? So part of stealing your Marines' minds before you go into combat is like, know your job, be comfortable in your job, know your IAs, right? Shit's going to get thrown at, stuff's going to get thrown at you, but you can't focus on the crazy stuff. You're just going to, if you think you're going to die, you're going to not do the right things, and you're going to die. You're going to make poor decisions in combat. And that, I felt like there was a pervasive mentality of sort of, and then at a point I was like, oh, it's not going to be that bad. It's, the AO's not that bad. I remember we finished Mojave Viper, they said, you're good enough for this mission or something, like the big rousing, hey, we're ready to go, like, before they jump into D-Day, like, we're the most trained, unit, and we got like, hey, kind of thing. So that was, I just did not feel good going to Afghanistan. I didn't feel comfortable. I felt like the AO wasn't that bad, but I didn't like the feeling that we were not, I don't think we were prepared to go. I wouldn't have taken that company to like DSU. I wouldn't have taken that company probably to OIF 1, because I think they basically screwed the training so bad, and having all that lack of vehicles, I really did not feel that we were at all. I mean, we were ready enough, as the battalion commander said, but yeah. And it was surreal landing in Afghanistan. It was surreal. Like, I couldn't believe I was in Afghanistan, like in the desert again. Like, you got me effing kidding me.
What did they tell you about Bravo Company's mission? What was it going to be in Afghanistan?
Initially, they told us it was, we're basically doing, civil action patrols. We're in town. We'll be doing presence patrols, censusing, really basic stuff. Big economy of force. We had a VCP, but essentially, like, battalion had these big dreams. We're going to go to Pakistan, or we're going to do stuff. But I mean, we were there for like within 8 hours of getting out to the patrol base. It's like, okay, we can push out 8 Marines a day. That's it. Okay, yeah, well, this is what we're gonna. This is not what we should be doing here. So, I think after the first couple days feeling out the AO, I felt kind of better, because I really didn't. As long as we did our things, and we did our PCCs and PCIs and remained disciplined, I felt that we were not safe, but there wasn't enough rope out there to hang us. Like, we weren't going to get out over our skis in that AO. So yeah, and then that was the initial mission we had. Paulie Now, 3rd Platoon, us at Shabu, and then you had the castle.
So how old were you at the time, and what was your rank and billet?
I was a staff sergeant, platoon sergeant, 1st platoon, and I was 35, I think. Old. I was an old staff sergeant. I know that.
So when did the company leave for Afghanistan?
When did we leave? In September, October of 09, right?
End of October.
They all blur together, like the leaving times, because we came home. I don't want to talk about the stupid libo and all that leave we got when they made us all wait for orders and all that stupid stuff. That's a whole nother tape.
Who'd you leave behind?
My wife, Melissa. We got married. Actually, we got married October 16th. I think we left like maybe 8 or 9 days after that. Yep. And my family, my brother, mom, dad, brother. Yep.
So what were your first impressions? Can you talk a little bit more about your first impressions of the AO in Hellmann province?
Yeah, like nothing. I mean, it was the middle of nowhere, They had lost Marines at our patrol base, the unit, 2nd LER. I think they were Alpha companies. No, they were Delta company. They had a really cool Irish platoon commander, Staff Sergeant Matson, who would later come back to Bravo Company as our company ops chief. It was almost like it reminded me of the first deployment. Like, it was very austere. Right away, though, my initial responses were really spread thin here in the patrol. When we did our tour of the patrol base and the castle and moving around, it was like, okay, it was just, when we get there, all the vehicles, remember, were pillboxes. Vehicles hadn't moved in like 3 months. I think they had the mortar would move. They had one or two that would move. So it was, from an LAR platoon sergeant guy perspective, it was like, when's the last time we maintained vehicles? Is this what we're doing here? You know, like 2 patrols a day, right? 2 OPs a night. Yeah, that's all we can do. Oh my God, this is going to be a long one. The way the terrain was set up, I mean, it was basically, you had some IV lines, you had some dikes, you had some canals, so you had some geographical things, but I mean, basically where we were in that low portion of the desert was flat. So, I mean, it was, you know, I didn't feel anyone was going to sneak up and start shooting at us, you know. But, yeah, it just felt like we were stretched thin. And I thought that was going to be our home forever. And the best we're going to do is 2 patrols a day.
So what were your thoughts on the mission at the time?
I think it was all we could do. I think we did a good job censusing. We did a good job developing the AO. But I just got a sense, like, not that it's going to be all for naught, but we're going to turn this over and no one's going to do anything. Because I got the feeling at that point that where we were was kind of like a side, we need to be down there because someone said get down there, but it wasn't like, I didn't feel like we were like where stuff's gonna be popping off, you know. So I felt like we could execute the mission given, so, which we did.
Did the transition with 2nd LAR go according to plan?
Yeah, I thought they did an excellent job, and I think they only been there like a month. They hadn't been there at that patrol base for very long, but they had a really solid setup. We did a really good CMR turn. We did a no joke CMR turnover. Remember, we had everybody pulling, like, people had hand grenades, like all over just dropping hand grenades off. But yeah, I want to say that was a great rip. They gave us AO, how to do logistics. You know, they introduced us to Huggy Bear. So I felt they did an excellent. I felt like I did a great turnover rip out with those guys. They did a great job.
Do you remember the first mission that you conducted?
I didn't conduct a mission because I couldn't even wear body armor. So the first mission I conducted was it after Captain Graham? All I remember is y'all got into contact. One of the teams got into a firefight, and at that point I'd been bored and I was like, "Effing, I'm gonna go out tomorrow. If this is gonna get kinetic, let's go. Let's have fun." So I went out, I think, on the next patrol, and tucked myself in. I said, I got the radio. If anything happens, I'll be coordinating with higher. You fight to fight. I'll be coordinating orders. You do your thing. I'll walk in the Ranger file. And I think we went to Star Trek Village. And then we came back and it was dark. The engineers were out. And I'm not the most coordinated of all people. And I remember jumping over those what are they, the dikes or the canal things, and just didn't think I was gonna make it. I made it. I came over and my foot fell in like a 3 foot deep hole and tore my ACL, and they had to carry me back. I remember I fell down. I'd fallen over, laying in the ground. Like, you've got to be kidding me! And that's because the engineers had all their light banks up, and I couldn't see through MGs. So that's why I tore my ACL. That was like first time, last time. I was like, screw that stuff. That's for the kids. That was horrible.
How was the communication between the different elements of Bravo Company? You know, all the platoons were pretty much split up. How were you able to keep in touch?
We didn't really communicate. Every once in a while we talked to Quali Now. We had daily stuff to the COC at the castle. But I don't think they were really doing anything. We were sending a lot of information. I don't think they were doing anything with it. We didn't have to deconflict our battle space too much because, it was, 5 clicks, right? I think we were 10 clicks from Quali Now, something like that. So, we were never going to bump into them. I think, it got to the point where I think I complained once or twice when the company would come out. I'm like, are you even looking at our patrol requests? Because we're not getting any word on what third platoon's doing. And then they started checking our stuff. And it was pretty funny because I think at that point Captain Graham had just started cutting and pasting some of the stuff, like the routine stuff. He just cut and pasted it because no one was looking at it. And he finally called him and we had a little laugh about that. But yeah, we might see him at the castle you know, or sometimes they would come to see us. We go to see them. We got stuck that one time, but I mean, really, we were on an island. Quali now was on an island, and the castle was on an island. Absolutely.
What did an average day look like for the first couple of weeks there at Cap Shabu?
Well, you guys did 2 patrols a day, right? 2 OPs. As a platoon sergeant, I ran the COC. I handled logistics. You probably remember me yelling at people to blouse their boots, shave their faces, clean their rooms, go to sleep. So I'd say my first 2 weeks, I was getting about 4 hours of sleep a night or a day. Babysitting at grown men. I feel like I don't know if you remember, I put up was doing the battle maps. I did all the consolidate all the census stuff. So I was kind of working a little bit as the intel. We had EB was doing intel stuff, and then he was just doing it so good that I had him stop because he wasn't getting any sleep either. So my biggest concern was making sure you guys were disciplined. And then I think my biggest fight was you guys never slept. Like when you would get off, you would hang out, or some of you kids had the PSPs, and it would drive me up the walls. Like, go to sleep. Like you guys, like I'd do that schedule. Like I'd spend hours trying to make a schedule where every 2 days you get an 8-hour block to sleep. Like my driving force was to make sure every Marine had 8 hours of sleep at least every 2 to 3 days so they could rest. And then I would come out and see you guys a-holes, you know, being what little kids do. You guys are just like little puppy dogs and you're playing around and telling stories and being goofballs. So,
does anything that happened those first couple of weeks stand out to you?
I want to say Huggy Bear, when we had the informant guy, when he would come out and talk to us, I thought that was just the interesting of how where the AO, like the people there really were so far away, right? You had people that never left that area, you know. Remember there was that mentally handicapped kid they took back to Lashkar God and then let him go, and they would come asking for him every day, and then you had to like pick the kid up, or if you know, like understanding that not just the culture, like the passion wall and all that stuff, but like these people literally might not go 10 miles from where they live their whole entire lives, you know, like that. I thought that stuck out to me a lot, like a lot.
So what was your relationship with the locals like? You know, were you able to establish relationships with more than just a couple people there? I was more working with the AMVP. I had to keep those guys in line because Captain Graham was not a fan of the AMVP, so I had to kind of be the mayor of Shabu Land. But when we had what do they call the Shura? Shura, yeah, we had a Shura with the elders, and I feel like the people out there were generally either non-committal, but I don't feel like they were antagonistic towards us, really, is the feeling I got. Is they were so far out in the, you know what I mean? Like they didn't give a ask who was in charge. They just leave me alone, I'll be fine, you know? So I felt the populace was pretty welcoming. Can you talk a little bit more about the Afghan security forces?
The Afghan Border Patrol were, I guess they were like second tier. I guess A&A was like the A gamers. They were the B gamers. But they had probably more combat experience in one squad of AVP than we probably had in the whole battalion. So that was the interesting thing, is in the, you know, Turkmen and Uzbeks and Olmecs and whatever, the Tartar, whatever. They were from all over the place. They spoke like 7 languages, and those guys been fighting for 20 years, most of their adult lives and their kids' lives, and they were, you know, an interesting bunch because they weren't a disciplined flaying force, and the way you had to deal with them to get them to do things, you had to shame them sometimes. You know, sit down and drink tea and eat that egg thing. They did that egg with the 10 pounds of salt in it, you know, and, you know, interacted, right? I mean, it was just having to deal with those guys was even, I mean, you had the balance of dealing with Marines, and then you had to deal with those guys, and it was like completely different, you know, stuff. You had to shame them into carrying the ECMs, right? Every day.
Did you have any translators you worked with?
Yes, we had Ganny, right? We had Kay. Ganny was a local. Ganny was awesome, little guy. What did he trade for that air conditioner? Like chickens? He traded chickens?
I think so.
But Ganny was like a really good-hearted kid. He was a really good kid. I don't know if he made it to America. And then Ganny was Pakistani from the States. He lived in Quetta, moved to America. And then Kay was like hilarious because he had just that, you know, whenever he'd interpret for somebody, it wasn't he said, it was like that sea sucker said. Remember that? He always get this dumbass said, you know, I love when Kay would interpret, because Kay was really smart. He was like a level 3. He could read and he could translate and interpret. And we had that other kid that wore remember he wore like the bedazzled jeans. Remember that kid, the younger kid that said he spoke like 9 languages and he barely spoke like Pashto. No, that was Dost. He's the one that got to translate. Remember, we had that third kid. He had bedazzled jeans.
That's right.
And he was his thing got blood on it. And he didn't have a change of clothes. Like, well, just put on something else. And he had like the jeans with like all the little rhinestones and stuff in it. I forget his name, but he lied his face off. He couldn't speak anything.
What did you do with any free time you had?
I didn't have much free time. I did have. I think we had The Office. Did we have The Office in the COC?
I didn't spend a lot of time in the
Yeah,
COC.
we had a tough book. I think Second LAR. One of the greatest things from the RIP is they gave us like The Office on a hard drive. So I'd never watched The Office before, so I started watching The Office. You know, 'cause I think I worked from noon to 8 in the morning or something. So I'd watch The Office at night. Because when you guys weren't out, when the OPs weren't out, I mean, literally, I would just walk around and make sure the, the posts were still awake. And then they had Drug Lord, which is a cool game I played a little bit. And then I had Dragon Warrior on my laptop. That I don't remember. I had the map for the AO I built, and I had the map I built for Dragon Warrior. Because there's not much to do at like midnight when you're working. But that's about it. Called home when I could.
When was your first contact with the enemy?
I didn't have any. If they shot rockets at us, but I don't remember when. Was that? They had what? The IED went off. The IED went off first. They had found a couple IEDs, and then they had the whole thing with the rocket with Jim and the Jai. I forget when that was though.
First week of December.
It was the first week of December, yeah. But I think that was about it. That was it. That was interesting from being in the COC standpoint, because in LAR, when you're in, you know, your job is to report, right? You develop the situation report, So like I always am ingrained when something happens, I report something up, let them know we're in contact this vicinity of blank. You know, next transmission is the size of the enemy, right? In case you get schwacked, you're getting some stuff out. So they went out on that patrol with EOD. I think it was a small patrol too. I think it was two of our guys. It was 3. It was Black, Ajay, and Captain Graham, right?
Jones is there.
Jones
Klein.
was there. Were they all out there?
Yeah, it was a pretty big patrol.
Pretty big patrol. They had a 2
and then
EOD guys.
4 or so ANBPs as well, I think.
So they didn't answer their radios at all. They didn't put out any calls. I reported contact to company, and I literally just kept calling, like, what the hell's going on? I called Sergeant Martinez in. After last known pause, we were starting to work up a fire, or getting an idea of a fire mission in case they needed stuff. Because at the time, you could hear distinct sets of gunfire. So you could hear single shots, light automatic, heavy automatic, and then some explosions, differing types of explosions. So we didn't know what the F was going on. Finally got, who was it? Bronny Black was out there, right? He was on the radio. So I finally got Black. I was like, pop a flare. What you're supposed to do when you get contact, you pop, you know, at a minimum you shoot pyros, so you know at least direction of fire, right? They didn't do that. So basically we heard shots and then this, and then, you know, it calmed down a little bit, and then some more explosions. And then I guess they caught 2 guys launching IRL. And they came back, they had to drag the bodies back and all that stuff. I talked to the people that were there. I was like, what the hell happened? Like, oh, we caught 2 guys. I was like, well, where's the machine gun fire coming from? Oh, there wasn't. What are you talking about? I was like, there's someone shooting machine guns. No. I'm like, no, heard it, did whatever. So I think like 4 days later, Huggy Bear came back around. He's like, they were shooting at you guys from across the river. I don't think you knew it, because I think the VCP took rounds from across the river. But when you get in the moment, that time you get focused on the 2 guys, you kind of forget what's going on, right? But yeah, I think the EOD guys are throwing like C4, like their C4 charge. I was just complaining, what was that noise? Like, what? I was like, went to the EOD guys. I'm like, I thought you initiated IEDs, because I heard grenades, and then I heard big explosions. Like, oh my God, we thought they were Schwack City out there, but they had a coordinated ambush, and then they all came back. Like, what the hell happened? We found out you guys are nuts. You guys are nuts.
What was the biggest threat that you faced overseas?
IEDs. EOD loved it down there. They were, I guess, for a point where RAO, our little patrol base, was the first time they had FOB or IEDs that were key fob detonated in the whole AO. So that's why the EOD guys hung out with us so much, because they had nothing better to do like everywhere else. But they were finding the key fob. I think because Huggy Bear would tell us where all the stuff was, but they would come back and as they bring the IEDs or destroy them, they're like, here's. So they knew there was 2 more out there because the key fob went to 6 starters, and they found 4 of the 6 starters. So I mean, it was that was my greatest concern. When you're doing the patrol schedules and putting people out, my biggest concern was when that sheep set off that one IED, and it was like they couldn't find the pressure plate with the metal detector. So whenever Marines, like we would go out and patrol on the boats, it's like as the platoon sergeant or platoon commander, you get your Marines as ready as possible to go execute their mission, and there's a point where you have to just let go, and you can't what if the shit out of it, right? You gotta kind of like, all right, they're as good as they're gonna get, but you still worry about it. They're like your little kids, you gotta worry about them. And I really wasn't worried about firefights. I was just worried about either the AMBP doing something stupid, or just one of those big ass 5-gallon drum or those paint buckets going off and killing a bunch of people. But at some point you can't. I mean, things are going to happen. They're going to happen, but you just have faith that you train Marines enough to do the basic things to where they might identify something before it happens, or they just get lucky.
Do you remember what happened to some of the locals, like Huggy Bear?
No, the last things I had heard from them is when we ripped out the pit, whoever those idiots were that came after us. They basically burned like every bridge in town. So those guys were insane.
In January of 2010, Bravo Company embarked upon its first large-scale offensive against the Taliban. The operation was nicknamed Western Light. What was the goal of Operation Western Light?
To take Tagaz, right? To set up a triangle-shaped cop north of Tagaz. Because somehow that was going to tie into going to Pakistan or something. There was an ulterior motive. They wanted to expand the AO because I believe we'd just gotten Alpha Company back. And the battalion needed to do stuff to get like Bronze Stars.
Do you have any insight onto how the operation was planned, or
not well? Would be. So they battalion did like a company minus level up, right? Remember in October? I forget what it was called, but
Northwest Poison.
Was that Northwest Poison?
Yeah.
I think that was like a Belle Biv DeVoe album, and I think it was a company minus, maybe probably company minus. They took over in the vicinity of Tagaz, and they took all of the patrol bases down to nothing. Right, we had no ability to patrol. We were basically just sitting there, and I guess whatever they did. I mean, but they gave us the order, the con ops, and the order, and it was just pictures of stuff and like arrows pointing to it. I'm like, well, that's not well done. They only had like 5 majors working in ops, and this is what they produced. I'm like, okay, I never had faith in the battalion to do anything properly, but I felt better. Like, well, have fun with that, fellas. I think we sent our guys over to Paulie now, right? We sent a couple.
Yeah, that was one of them.
We sent. I don't know. Do we send people?
5 or 6.
5. We didn't have anybody to send. It was nuts to do that. So we ripped out of Shabu. They get the order. I remember we had just gotten back to we were at Cop Pain for like a day, less than a day. And they had this order, and the order was like, there was a route clearance portion, there was an air assault portion. And I remember thinking, like, that's cool, air assault is pretty cool, right? Dismounted stuff. I'm an LAR guy, I'm like, oh, check that box. And then I remember Captain Graham was very upset we weren't. He's like, we're not the main effort, we're not the air assault. I'm like, well, what time's it kicking off then? He's like, 9:30. I'm like, at night? And they were good at military time? Like, no, during the day or whatever. I'm like, we're going to do an air assault during the day. Yeah. And the Ospreys are going to circle twice before they land. Yep. Okay, that's insane. What are we doing? Oh, we're doing route clearance. We'll be up there to support them coming in. I'm like, okay, so we're going to do route clearance. So we're going to drive like across the high desert to the low desert, where you could see, could you not, from the other side of the river to the high desert with naked eye. So we're going to drive at 2 miles an hour down a route, and we can drive off the route, right? Because they got to clear them on. So we're going to get there and support. They had a recon, platoon of recon, I think west in a blocking position. I think they had Charlie Company south. Just looking at it like, this is bad. Same deal, like when we got the call. There's times you get like, we didn't fight in Normandy or anything, but there's times you get like you get orders to do things. And you're like, well, this is going to end poorly, and it changes. Like it went and said my goodbyes to the people I liked in 3rd Platoon. Like, well, it's nice. Hey, whatever happens, keep your head down. Keep your powder dry. I love you, buddy. Have fun with that. Same thing we did before we crossed the line of departure in Iraq. Going to see your I walked almost a mile to go see my buddy in 2nd Platoon. We're in a screen line just to say goodbye because you don't know what's going to happen. We did it. DSU, there was one or two missions where we're like, I love you, I love you, buddy. Well, good luck out there, depending on where you go, and definitely, I definitely had that feeling before that mission. Like this, it's just there wasn't like a real for our platoon mission was to seize a patrol base, right? Seize a compound, and then start operating. 3rd Platoon was going to come from the bazaar. We're going to cordon it off clear. They're going to come back and stay with us. That part made sense, right? Because that's where the next Taliban strong point was, right? And in effect, what happened was, go figure, the route clearance team got slowed down. I think it took us 3 or 4 hours to get to where they were. There was only, you circle the freaking place right after morning prayer, like the people leave, right? They landed the Ospreys in like the courtyard. I knew the AD guys. I saw some helmet cam footage. Basically, I think they stacked in the courtyard, outside, which is a big time no. So they could have lost a ton of people that day if that was a kinetic environment. But they wound up ventilating the one poor guy that was still in there, and that was it. They were going to operate out of there for a few days. Then we were going to turn over the AO to Alpha Company, and then we were going to start patrol. We were getting ready to invade Pakistan, or not invade Pakistan, but go down to the southern border. So that's what we thought going into that thing. Yep.
On January 23rd, 2010, Bravo Company's 3rd Platoon was struck by a dismounted suicide bomber as they occupied their patrol base in the Zeranda-Calais Bazaar. The platoon suffered mass casualties. Can you tell me your recollections of that event?
So we had gone into Tagaz. So 3rd Platoon pushed into the bazaar. And they stayed there. We were supposed to cordon off and search it. We wound up, you remember, spending the first night, because we didn't have a place to stay. We literally stayed in the least defensible position in the history of military, like in the middle of an intersection, right, surrounded by 6-foot levee. On 6-foot levees, basically, is where we stayed. I remember we had all that wire we dragged out and all that stuff. I mean, I didn't sleep a wink. I was like, this is exactly how it's going to end. Like, literally horrible. The next day, we had moved in to the patrol base. We started fortifying it. We had dudes in there from Radbin, and they had one of those direction finder things. So you remember that, we just fortified the position. We cut off access to the other side of the canal. Because remember, we stole a trailer and a ton of concertina wire and sandbags. We started pushing out our perimeter, setting up VCPs, right? Because we're in the middle of a town, force protection stuff. Parked the vehicle. We did the same thing. We set up a COC. We had, I think at one point, 200 Marines in our wire that we were supporting, that were going to patrol. We did a key leader engagement. We started setting up a patrol schedule. The Radbin guys would start coming over like, hey, they're all still here. We can hear them on the radio. Like, I don't think they were supposed to tell us specifics, but basically their terp couldn't work high enough, and K, I think, had a clearance. So they were letting them get raw because they were getting so much stuff. They were losing their mind. Like, this is the greatest thing ever. Like, they were getting so much raw data. And they were like telling us, hey, they're setting up IEDs. These are the code words you're using for IEDs. They're watching you guys. They're watching you all the time. Like, oh, that's great. And, and they're using grids. They are behaving in a military manner. Like, okay. I think that was day 2. Coming, I think, to day 3. That night, they're like, hey, they're walking. They're getting within, we don't know which group they're looking at, but they're getting within 8 feet of you guys. I'm like, okay. Well, that's not us. He's like, well, they're going to do a suicide attack. They're gonna do a suicide bombing tomorrow. Like, all right. So we stuck our wire. That was the second time we cleared the wire. We put another 30, 40 feet of standoff in our wire. I think we put a little fortification up by the LEB for ECP. Let 3rd Platoon know, hey, you guys might want to come back in, or you need to start getting more standoff. Because remember, they came and got wire and sandbags. I actually talked to Smith that night. The thing with Smith was a really good kid, But you get to a point when you're like a junior Marine, you're full of yourself. Like you get super confident, you become like the man, right? And then there's like a weird tipping point some guys do where they get a little bit too of the man. And he got really too of the man during the workup, and it really, it's kind of, I wish he had been with us in second or in first platoon. And I talked to him that night, I talked for like 15 minutes. And it was good to see that he had come back down to like talking like how a sergeant should talk, being, concerned about this, wondering about that, worried about this. And we had 15-minute talk about standoff, just stuff. It was good at the time. I remember I actually talked to the pass waters about it. I was like, oh man, Smith's doing good, that's good. It's good to see, because sometimes Marines, not speaking ill of the dead, is always a good kid, but just sometimes, in a career progression, it happens with people, like they wander off, they're still doing good, but they wander off the path a little bit, and then they come back on, and they're rock stars. I'm like, that's good stuff. So we sent them all that stuff out there. I think the next morning, they even gave us like a time. They said sometime around like 11 or after second prayers or something. Okay. We got up, and I think we pushed extra Marines. We pushed Marines, I think, further to the south from our group, so they get observation down there. And then I called my wife, so I'd been up for a fucking long time. I called my wife, went to bed. Okay, we're somewhere. The thing we were going to do is over. We'll be here for a little bit, so maybe I'll call you in a day or two. And I literally hung up the phone, put it back in the vehicle, walked over to get my first sleep in like 2 days, and then the ID went off. So obviously, as soon as the ID went off, you just knew what it was. You looked down in the south, you saw like the cloud. I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ. Here we go. So we had to get the QRF organized. We had to do reporting. Captain Graham grabbed the QRF. We sent half the platoon out. I think we had the post standers and like 3 Marines, I think, back. Did a lot of coordinating with company, a lot of relaying stuff. It was like really unnerving because you know what's going on. Like, it's absolute bedlam right there, right? Because you don't train for mass casualties. You just don't. I mean, you do, but you don't. Like, nothing prepares you for when things happen. And you could just hear, like, the confusion. You could hear the hurt on the radio. You could hear, what was going on. You just you feel for the guys, because it's like now every single person, right? See what's going on. The first thing you're like, I hope nobody, like, God, I hope no one's dead, right? And then they start popping the medevac 9 lines and stuff up. They're doing the CAS reps. Like, Jesus Christ. Okay, Doc's gone. Okay, Smith's injured at the time, right? Kane's gone. Smith's, they're triaging the wounded, and like, it took 20 minutes for the 9-line to leave battalion. I mean, it was like a fucking eternity. Where you're just listening on the radio and you just want to like grab the handset and start beating people with. And like, why are we even calling you? Like, we have SATCOM, we can just call directly in, but people have to do their thing, and it's just frustrating. I mean, it didn't really impact anything that happened that day as far as getting people to care, because Smith wasn't going to make it, and the people that were wounded, it was very bad to, okay, they're going to make it kind of stuff. But just seeing how that was handled the one time it happens is like, it's frustrating. And the Marines got to see their buddies blown up, and they got to pick through the pieces and pick them up. And we had to secure a 3rd platoon. They had to come up and stay with us for a little bit. We handled a lot of their stuff because they were shell shocked, as they should have been. But I think hindsight being 2020, I think that day could have been. I feel like every casualty Bravo company suffered, and mostly in the battalion, could have been avoided if just. That mentality isn't pervasive. Like, it was cool to be in the bazaar, right? It's cool. Well, that's where the Taliban, General Nicholson, came down, right? Like, oh yeah, it's cool. You guys are, where it is. Like, okay, well, they're in an indefensible position probably. So like when they did the sweep, they found an IED, like literally right in that trash can. They found command wires going to the mosque. Like, you can't make this shit up. So it has a pull, and then that impacts people's. People can get very morbid. It affects their brain. Like, it affects how they think. Like their risk taking, like their thought process. All that shit gets affected, and it's really bad. It's detrimental for a unit. It's sad for the families. And it was just. I felt at that point. That's when the deployment took a turn. I felt everything was hunky-dory till then. Deployment takes a turn. Everyone's expecting to go to Pakistan and just get some payback, right? And then that doesn't happen. And then, stuck doing that mission we did till the tail end, I think, was rough, especially on 3rd Platoon.
Did you get any, you talked a little bit about intel about the suicide attack we were getting. Did we get any insight after the attack as to who this person was?
No.
Who
Well,
sent him?
No. So what also happened too is the height of stupidity. Is Charlie Company was south in the river. This all happened within an hour and a half, maybe. So Charlie Company was south of the river doing interdiction patrols. They come across the repeater, right? So the Taliban, the Mujahideen, put the repeater out somewhere in the middle. Nowhere. No one's going to find it. That's how they're talking in all their ICOM chatter. So they find it. I hear it on the radio of the battalion. They say, hey, we found the repeater. I'm like, cool. I'm going to tell the Radbin guys that. So I go grab the Radbin guys. Hey, they found the repeater. Is that good? He's like, oh, that's awesome. I'm like, cool. And they go back. Like, what are they doing? I'm like, I don't know when we get back. And you hear them talking on the radio. I'm like, oh, we're going to go prosecute, whatever. And we tell them not to. That's not their call. That's not their call. It's made. They're like, this decision is made at like the CIA line, like, somewhere in like DC, right? I'm like, okay. And I try to go on battalion. Like, hey, Radbin guys are saying not to get it. Roger. Hey, whatever their coffee or Charlie's call sign was. Don't touch it. Leave it there. Oh, we already brought it back in the vehicle, right? So as soon as they unplug it, bring it back in the vehicle, they lose all comms. So they lose all chatter. So all intel went to zero after that. It's like, sometimes you're just like, how dumb are you people? Like, you watch too many Mission Impossible movies. Like, why would you do that? Like, we literally listen to everything they're saying, and if they were getting another antenna thing, they could triangulate the position within like 1 foot or something. It's just ridiculous. Just shit like that. You're just like, glad you get a paycheck too. But I digress.
When did Operation Western Light end?
God, we were there for a week? 10 days. Alpha Company ripped out with us. And, just some people are on for a ride, right? Some people are there as tourists doing whatever it is they think they're doing. And then I remember leaving, I was pissed we left Shabu because I felt we had a good battle rhythm going. We had all that bigger force of ANBP. I felt we were going to be able to shape the battle space a little bit more. I felt we were making good strides. Ripped out with those idiots from the pit who just idiots. And then we ripped out with Alpha Company, and you just know the AO's not going to, you're just like, like, here you go, guys, put the bayonets off your rifles, put the pins back in your laws, please. No offense to those guys, but they were doing full spectrum counterinsurgency operations at Leatherneck before they got there. So I felt, I just felt like everything that had happened in the previous 7 days was for nothing. I just felt like, now we're going to go back. At least we're going to go to Pakistan and start doing some stuff, right?
What was the new mission that the company was assigned after getting back to Copane?
So what I think happened is we didn't have a mission because they thought we were going to Pakistan, and I guess no one checked. No one kicked it up the next higher level. So we didn't have a mission for I think 6 days. We were just at Copane. And I think Captain Newkirk is the XO. I think he basically came up with, this is the path forward. And because the battalion decided to run 2 battalion cops, they didn't bring enough manpower to go with. That's why we did security there, because they literally we're going to Afghanistan. Let's bring every field grade officer and E7 and above we possibly can. We don't need truck drivers. We don't need watch standards. Don't worry about it. So, for the 15th time, the line companies are supporting battalion. So we were sitting at Copane, and they decided to just send us out for 10 days at a time, 5 days back. Finger on map, do your interdiction, full spectrum counterinsurgency operations. Drive out in the desert. Yeah.
Did you feel the company was well suited for that mission?
Yeah, I think LAVs, we should have been in MRAPs or GLT, whatever those things are, MAPVs, yeah, go out in the middle of nowhere, organically operate at platoon or section levels and perform interdictions or screen lines. That was literally right that was in our wheelhouse finally. So at least we were away from there most of the time. So we were doing what I think LAR should have been doing, which is driving around and finding stuff and doing things. Yeah.
Was the company well equipped?
Yeah, the only thing, I mean, hindsight being 2020, I would have switched to Matt V's mainly. Maybe got a G-Boss mast out there, but I mean, we had what we needed. I felt, we never drove on the rat lines. I think the only time I felt really nervous going out on those patrols was just leaving. Like once we got outside of Stout Station by about 3 clicks, I was like, we're deuces. No one's touching us out here. If they do, we're gonna F them up. So. I think the only time I think Mayor Passwater's, his vehicle had an L. He had the L. Remember his 25 broke down. He had an L for like one mission. I was constantly scared that he was going to hit an ID and just get schwacked. But that didn't happen. So yeah, we were well equipped for that.
Do any events over the next couple of months stick out to you?
Yeah, we found all those drugs. That $1 billion worth of heroin was pretty cool.
Can you speak to that sort of aspect of the mission?
Yeah, we were in
drug interdiction.
We were in that bowl. Yeah, so we were supposed to be confiscating. The word was they're running up, weapons and drugs and money up north, and we were doing interdiction missions. And we had the AMBP in their little Ford Ranger trucks, and I guess we were out in that. It was almost like a bowl, right? We were sitting in that bowl. We were in this weird. I think I'd just come down. We had a scout team that was too high up on the hill, and you could see like a stack of rocks from like 50 miles away. I was like, guys, bring it down the hill a little bit because they can see you. And then just as soon as I said that, they're like, hey, look, there's trucks. And then the AMDP went out and chased those guys, and then it was just a ton of drugs, 2 truckfuls of drugs, a lot of drugs. I think it made CNN too, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. That was, of course, it's probably still sitting in a Connex. Like, it's probably still sitting there at some base. Everybody thinks it's like a wall. It's probably $2 billion worth of heroin in it. That what I thought was neat.
Did you ever know what happened to it? We had a DEA agent with us.
Yes,
I think.
they put it in a shipping container. Like, remember where the internet was at Cop Payne? There were those big shipping containers. It was in one of those, and then they wanted to get rid of it, and they wanted to dump it in the river. But they couldn't dump it in the river because they're afraid everyone would get high, like downriver, and they couldn't burn it because then everyone would get high. Like they were just concerned it's basically hazmat. So I think the DA agent left, and when we left Cop Payne, I'm pretty sure it was still locked in a shipping container. So who knows? There could have been an Afghan Scarface from that. Maybe took over half the country in drugs. I think the night we went out, we got separated. When Captain Graham's section, our section, were separated by like 70 clicks running off of SATCOMs, and we spent the night on top of this fucking dune. It was like a 400-foot cliff of baked sand. We couldn't see anything. I thought that was pretty cooler, but I mean, from the interdiction stuff, maybe somebody leaving something on the ground we had to go back for, that stuck out.
What about the sandstorms? The wind of 120 days.
When they turned the hair dryers on, that was horrible. That place, what a shithole. The heat, the wind, right? Remember that night, when you get like 140% illume, like you can read at night. Like it was like being at like in Star Wars, some kind of weird thing, but it's like running out of fuel and then getting hit by a sandstorm. That was I think that was I don't know if that was peak stupid, but that was up there. That was like, oh, we're out of gas. Great. We got barely enough to run vehicles, and they wanted to run a census patrol somewhere. I'm like, I don't know if you understand this. We lose gas, we lose electricity, we lose comms. And then that stupid storm came in. Are you kidding me?
The ferry, I think, went down.
Yeah, that did. Yeah, and they were going to get us helo stuff. I got in an argument with the air officer. So I had to walk. I used to get so pissed walking. We had that coil set up, and then Marines were like watching movies at night. Like you'd see a million lights. At some point during the effing workup, red lights became tactical for some reason. Like, you can't see a red light. Like, bullshit, you can see a red light for like 4,000 miles. And I would lose my mind walking the coil to get to places. And by the time I get there, I'd be all fired up and tired. And I'd start screaming. And then they were like, we're out of fuel. We don't have any water. This is embarrassing. We're not doing missions. I really wanted to send us out to like census this stupid town. I'm like, we can't take all the reserve fuel from the company just to see who lives there. Like, that's just stupid. Like, we're gonna wait until, whatever. That was peak stupid.
On March 24th, Bravo Company received word that their battalion sergeant major, Robert Cottle, was killed along with his driver, Lance Corporal Rick Centani, when their vehicle struck an improvised explosive device. When did you first receive that news?
I was at the internet center. We were back on what do you call it, 5-day guard rotation. I was in there. I think I was chasing down Danny Merck for something. I had to get Merck for something, and then they went River City. They turned off all the internet, and then someone said it was Echo 9, whatever. So if it's Echo 9, somebody, it's Charlie. It was Echo 3 Charlie, Echo 9 Charlie. I'm like, oh shit, that's Sergeant Major. So I went right over to the EOD tent where the EOD guys were, because it's IED 9 last one, just for curiosity. Where did they get hit? And they're like reading the grid, and they point at the map, and where it was like, remember when we first got, you might not have done this, you were a little baby at the time, but we did a map recon of like areas where we're never going to put an LEV, right? And where they got hit, remember the rat line that went up to Tagaz, like to the cop there, and there was that like T intersection was actually on the map. That's where they got hit, like right at the absolute place I would never put a vehicle, right? A two-way intersection, T intersection. So that was it just was like, so like Sergeant Major Cottle's a good dude. I know Santani, but I mean he was like this the SWAT cop. I talked to him a bunch during the workup for some reason, because certain events that may have occurred during the workup involving a certain corporal whose name rhymes with turd. I had to talk to the Sergeant Major a few times, and he would always, for some reason, see me and talk to me. Actually, he hated me, but it was like kind of upsetting that that occurred and how it occurred, because I feel like if they had been in MRAPs, like if they had been in MATVs, I feel like that we had MATVs and we weren't using them as we should have, because LEVs are. I work at Aberdeen Proving Grounds. LEVs are like the least survivable vehicle, even with the D kits on. They're, if you hit an IED in the right place, it's going to tear the inside of the vehicle out like it did on that L. And it's not pretty. I think every IED that struck a vehicle on that deployment should have known better than how they got struck and where they were. But that was very sad. And then they had to bring the vehicle back, and it was like at the end. It was like there was like a lull, and then that happened. You know what I mean? It was just, no one wants to lose a sergeant major. No one wants to lose anybody, but it's like kind of, especially where they lost them, was pretty horrible.
How long did Bravo Company's interdiction mission last?
Jeez, it lasted from February to almost May, right?
When did you first get the news that you'd be rotating home?
We got it a bunch of times, right? So that was like a volcano or something in Iceland. So that was when his first LAR coming for the RIP, because like the rumor was they're coming early because they wanted this reservist out of there, right?
Was there a reason they wanted the reservists out of there?
Yeah, they got active professionals out to take over. So they, because the Advon I think was delayed, and then when the Advon got in, the main body was delayed. So when they got there, it was like, God, when are we getting the hell out? It's like the donut. At that point, it's like, there's no good chow. You go out in the desert, stare into the abyss for 90% of the time. You play spades. You put a guy up at the turret. You're in the middle of a pool table, and especially when I don't remember this, but they had the Army was out, and ODA was out there, and Blackhawks and Apaches blowing shit up, and then we'd have to go like do BDAs on their stuff. So like we think we're doing all this interdiction stuff, and the really cool stuff is like these two guys in like Hawaiian shirts flying over in a helicopter, gunning stuff up, and then leaving, like doing all kinds of weird secret scroll stuff out there. I think we were done. I think we were, as a company, we were just like, get the F out of here for something else. The people that were dying at that point were like stupid, not stupid, but it's just like they shouldn't be happening. If you just got, I think there was a sense, like I don't know, maybe I'll be, like something bad's gonna happen. So it was time to get the hell out of there. But yeah, I think we got the word they were coming in like I think it was like February, March. It was, we were getting the word from them.
Did you feel that you'd accomplished the mission that you set out to complete?
Yeah, we didn't, like I said, we didn't have that much of a mission, so we did a lot of not that much of one. So I think we like in Shabu, you guys did a hell of a job censusing the people there. You did a lot of bats. I had an expansive database. That's what I spent a lot of my time doing. We literally handed it over, and they were just like, "Thanks, see ya." So that was upsetting. And then to Gaz, I think we would have started something good. And then thanks, see ya. So, and then ironically enough, when First LER ripped out with us, we did a great left seat, right seat with them. Showed them how we operated, and they came back and they kicked us off our vehicles. It wasn't the Marines we were with; it was from the battalion. But I actually shared a berthing area with the Motor T guys, and I was like, hey, yeah, just what we developed over time was kind of my brainchild, was taking the trucks out with us so we don't have to do resupplies, right? And even getting our MRAPs, I had to fight to get an MRAP. I wanted our lead Vic to be an MRAP, and I was like, why do you run resupplies out? Just give us trucks. Just make this easy. So we're running out of gas, right? As soon as we get out there, so was it 7 hours of driving in soft sand equals 72 gallons of gas burn. So like, just get out there and like, no, we're going to do it like real LER. Okay, well, you're going to run out of gas. You're not going to support everybody. Well, we got this. And then they ran out of gas like 4 days out. They cut off all the stuff that like even second LER did that we took over, like the Esco berries inside the vehicle, all that stuff. They got rid of all that. They got rid of it, put the seats back in. They went full retard. They did everything. God bless them.
So when and how did you leave Afghanistan?
We left in the end of April, May, right? It's funny, when I'm on deployment, like, I don't know what the day is. I don't, like, the only reason why I know, like, certain dates are when people post pictures on Facebook. Like, January 23rd, I kind of know now, but I just knew January sometime. We lost McDonald's sometime around 4th of July, and people post on Facebook. Like, if you ask me when a major firefight was, I don't know, it was sometime before, 3 weeks before a Thanksgiving or a week before a Marine Corps birthday, like, because I don't, like, dates, I don't give a shit about what day it is. It's either, whatever Zulu time and you get an order, but it's basically like day 74 of suck. But yeah, we flew out on Ospreys, which was not, I think more people were scared of flying out on Ospreys than they were any time on the deployment. So I remember that flight out, and then we got stuck at Leatherneck. It was hell. I didn't even get my pedicure. I want to get a pedicure and a mani-pedi and a massage in Kyrgyzstan, and got screwed out of that. That was great. And then you had your your man-ass moment. That was great. That was a good time. I still tell that story at work. It's pretty fun.
How were you welcomed back home?
Another good welcome home, I think. We had they did it right. Every time we came home, they did it right. I think about that, Major Devine, I think, might have still been the PAO. At Dietrich, but he always did nice stuff for us. But I felt welcome back. We had a thing with the VFW, or was that the Elks Lodge? They had a big thing at the Elks Lodge. Tons of people there. It was actually funny because my wife had come out to California. One of the wives that came out to California. It's like, hey, you can come out if you want, but I'm not probably gonna get released, and we're gonna fly home. So my wife came out, and then they pulled us all. We could have had the night out, like, with our wives, and they pulled us all back because the head guy was one of those people that just sucked. So I came home and I didn't have a ride back. So we got home. My wife was still flying from California. So we landed there, and we were staying at my wife's house in Silver Spring. So I didn't have a place to go. So when I got one of the Marines to drive me, I was like, does anybody here live in Silver Spring? So I got a random Marine that had not deployed with us, that just checked encampment to drive us back. And I was home by myself for a little bit. It's actually kind of nice, just chilling out, and got back into getting the company ready for round 4, which never came, thankfully.
What are some of the things you remember most about your service in Afghanistan?
It was hard. It was probably the biggest challenge of my career. It was just hard. Like, I felt the workup sucked. I felt like kind of the generation, like the 2009, 2010 generation, had a little bit of they'd already done it, but they hadn't done it yet. I think it's just this, it's by that point, like, the whole, people knew so much from TV, and people knew so much that you all slid in. It was all like, just slid into this, like, like, I'm the salty veteran, like, you've been in Afghanistan for 7 minutes, like, trying to break, like, to break that it was like constant the entire time. It's like guys were not in like Way City and like, you know, like you need to shave, like we, you know, you probably remember this one. Like I just felt like, but that we didn't have the opportunity to reinforce that during the workup because we always were from here to there, doing this to this, doing random training here, white space for 6 days, sitting in a parking lot, you know, going to Mojave Viper, getting 1 day of platoon training. Like I don't felt we had the time to adequately get the platoon where we wanted it. It was good enough where it was, but I felt that was the most work I've had to do as a platoon sergeant. I just felt like I was constantly, like Pass Waters and Witzel, we were constantly doing stuff that we should have been doing during the workup, but we never got the opportunity to. And I think that through the course of deployment, you know, it just, you know, it's like I said, you guys didn't like to sleep. You would just stay up all of that. It would drive us nuts, you know, like get some sleep, guys. You know, we're gonna be here another 5 months. You know, you need some sleep. I think it was just, just the way everything was, just the way just there's so much friction everywhere that you were just fighting friction all the time. That, you know, you spent so much time just fighting to stay where you were. You know, and it was for a leader, it's probably transparent to the younger guys because you just got your role. That's the best time in your life when all you gotta do is do, right? You don't have to think and, you know, worry too much. But it was wearing. I think the losses we had, I just feel, you know, shouldn't have happened. You know, Afghanistan's going to fall back to the Taliban. I feel like even at the time we left, it's like this experiment's not going to work. You know, I just feel bad. Like you did it. You know, when I look at Afghanistan, I'm grateful that I got back together with my wife and we had, you know, 3 beautiful children. You know, like the things I pull from that deployment are, you know, it's given me the life kind of I have now with my family. So I look back, like when I think, man, I never should have gone. I'm like, well, if I never should have gone, then I never probably would have got back with my wife, you know. But I got to hang out Pass Waters and, you know, with some, you know, some of my guys, but like I didn't. At the end, I'm like, man, I really didn't need to go. Like I don't. It didn't. Not that I feel like I had that impact, but I just feel like me or another guy probably would have done the exact same thing. So.
Can you elaborate more about your thoughts on the war in Afghanistan as a whole?
You know, it's a country with 32 different languages, different cultures. People aren't really Afghani there. That's not their primary concern. I think just that culture. I mean, they're fighters, but that's where warlords rule over places like that, right? There's, you know, it's over there. You're fighting a corrupt Vietnam. You know, if you have a corrupt government you're trying to prop up, or, you know, and you're fighting an uphill battle the entire way, and that kind of stuff takes like 3 or 4 generations to change. So, I mean, that was year 7, right? Well, now they're leaving now. I just felt like this. No, I mean, and we weren't even up in like the other regions where it was a lot worse. Like this just isn't gonna. I feel like in Iraq when we left in 06, 07, like, hey, they got a shot at this. We're gonna figure this out. And then obviously all the foreign policy that's failed across just watching that just disintegrate too. And you're like, well, what did I go anywhere?
Do you have any regrets?
I don't know. I feel like I did. I feel like I did the most. I feel like I left it all in the field. I felt like, I mean, I regret having a burst appendix. I mean, like that last deployment, I just feel like I wasn't 100% physically. I wasn't 100% mentally. My regrets probably is not letting go a little bit more in between the deployments. Like I went from 2003 to 2009, like just nonstop. And I feel like I held on a little too tight and I got beat up a lot. And then by the time the deployment came around in Afghanistan, I felt like I was just drained, like I needed. And then the workup, you know, just everything leading up to it. Like, I mean, I was physically probably broken, kind of mentally exhausted, and then, you know, hoping for what we were going to have in the workup, and it didn't come, and then just having to deploy, like, just, you know, like that, like you feel like you're not getting it all, like you're not doing the best you could have. I think maybe if I had just not held on as tight, it would have been, I don't know, at least mentally less draining. I think we did the best we could everywhere we went. And that's all you can really do, right?
Can you talk a little bit about the rest of your time in the Marine Corps?
Yeah.
From after the Afghan deployment to when you retired?
Yeah, came back. Honestly, when I came back, and this is the first when I came back, I took leave. I was married, so I had a wife. That impacted my career, but I feel like I could track the course of the company over 20 years. And I feel like when I showed up, the company before I got there had fought. None of those guys really got trained. They literally figured out how to do everything on their own. I'm sure Hellmann probably talked about that. So a lot of the stuff wasn't institutionalized yet, but it was what they knew and it was like learning through doing kind of thing, right? And then when Strack took over, we started institutionalizing the learning a little bit more. So we started to establish this battle rhythm, and then we got the company to a point where we could individually operate pretty well. Vehicle level, section level. Company level, not so much, because you can't operate as a company. Platoon level, you could operate, but that's a big deal for reserve unit. And then we went to OIF-1, and then we came back, and then we dipped again. And then we had a slow kind of uptick, and then we went to the DSU. DSU, I feel like we ramped up sky high. And then we got back from DSU, again, the worst company commander we ever had, just destroyed the company, and we went kind of back down. We went, and it's when you take ownership, Hilton probably might have talked about this. You take ownership of the company, right? You're reservists, they call us homesteaders, but you're the guy that's, I remember if so-and-so from back here, but you can track the company, you can watch it. And, Marines always leave stuff better than you find it, right? So I felt when I came in, Bravo Company I thought was good. And then as we got better, you could see. And the only reason why it got better was just because we got a little bit better. We got more formally instructed. The guys that started it didn't get any formal training. LAR was brand new. So we got to learn through their mistakes and the community's mistakes. And then, okay, now we're here. We're going to come up. And then we hit that valley after 06. And it was a low valley. And we didn't dig ourselves out of it. We just kept, we probably dug ourselves out of it deeper, but we just kind of creeped up. At the company, we had people that knew what they were doing. We had enough people that knew what they were doing, officer enlisted, that we could pull, we could phone it in, right? We had enough people and enough key billets that you could pull it off, and let the inertia guide you. When we got back in 09, 2010 is when this next iteration of the reserve, the strategic reserve, right? Not the strategic, the operational reserve. And then all the training shifted. So then the focus wasn't on individual skills, right? It was on collective skills, company level skills. And what basically happened, at least at our unit, and I'm being in another company, the battalion, is they overlooked the fact that reservists need to be able to do the basic things. And they started focusing on, you probably remember doing this, we got to do a route clearance. We're going to get graded on a route clearance, right? Or a route reconnaissance, movement of contact or whatever. They would give you, they let you walk you can walk the objective area, right? You rehearse your actions on objective. So they basically give you the answers to the test before the test, right? You spend all day memorizing the answers for the test to execute the test. So they can check the box 7 times, right? So what happens to your individual skills? No one learns anything. I learned that today I have to walk 16 feet, a target pops up, I shoot at it, I get on the radio, I call back the yankety yank, right? You remember doing this. So you basically we weren't training Marines properly. So the last 4 years at Bravo Company, I just beat my head against the wall dealing with the I&I staff guys who were they were comfortable, who were very competent. They were just comfortable allowing Marines to fail in training, at the qual ranges. They crews would unk, and no big deal. I'm dude, I never had crews unk the range. I would get them ready to pass or, whatever. But by the time I left Bravo Company, I'd already reserved myself that the company was probably worse off than when I got there. I had to resolve myself. I became a first sergeant. I went up to a company in New York, Echo Company, 4th LAR, who had just, they were coming from the bottom and working their way to the top. So it was nice to go into a unit that was on the ascendancy and was growing. It was just nice. It was kind of like one deployment won't make up for another deployment. If you had a bad deployment, right, your next deployment's not going to make up for it. But generally, if you move companies, it doesn't make up for it either. But I got kind of in there as the company went on. So I was there for 3 years, and it really grew and to see a company grow that I was part of, and I got that good feeling again, like, man, these guys are starting to, they're really they're so much better than they were before. And where Bravo Company was like, we just hit a level, and basically Bravo Company was sustained by the actions of 3 or 4 people. Even when I left, like just some guys did all the work, some people did none of the work. At the higher levels, you had this good troopies and all, but you got to bring the troopies up, and people were just getting out. Like, no one sticks around anymore. I went to 4th Combat Engineers, first sergeant. Like my time, I mean, I like the people there, but you can see why people get out of the Marine Corps the longer you're in. But I felt like I finished up as a first sergeant. I helped Marines out. I felt, and you probably noticed when I was your platoon sergeant, but there's a lot of times I felt my main job outside of training for war was protecting Marines from all the bullshit. I try to do that the best of my abilities, either through influencing superiors or just taking it like right in the chin, because there's a lot of stuff I feel that they make Marines hate the Marine Corps. They come up with it and they push it down on you, and I always try to filter it out, and because it's just stupid. But yeah, I think that sums up the rest of the game there.
Do you feel that your country's grateful for your service?
I don't care. I mean, they don't have to be. Right? That's why it's called service. So, I mean, that's nice to get discounts, like Applebee's and stuff, but the one thing, you probably remember me saying this in Afghanistan. I said it when we got back in 2006. Like, guys, you're not entitled to anything. I remember me saying that right up front of the chapel. You're not entitled to anything. You did something that 99.9% of your peer group didn't do. You should be proud that you came over here and acquitted yourselves well, but this doesn't entitle you to anything. If people don't like the fact you're in the military, that's their business. People shouldn't bow down on their knees. You're a servant, you're a civil servant. You swear an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That's what you do, right? Silent professionals. So, if you're grateful, thanks. I don't like when people thank me for my service because I feel uncomfortable, but I don't care. That's probably not the answer you're looking for, but it's nice if they are. Don't care if they're not. So, I'm grateful for my service, for being allowed to serve. So a lot of people can't serve.
Well, Mark, thank you very much for taking the time to sit for this interview. As you know, this interview will be submitted to the Library of Congress to be preserved for the benefit of future generations. So it's very possible that your descendants will be watching this interview in the future. Is there anything that you'd like to say to your descendants at this time?
Think about stuff before you do it. I feel like if I had to talk to 18-year-old Mark from now, like think about, like, look at yourself from the perspective of others, not care about peer pressure, but whenever you're going to make a decision or do something, just think if you were outside looking in, how would you view yourself? Because I feel if I did that in my younger years, I would have had a much better run at my 20s, let's just say that. But I think that goes through every aspect of your life. Anytime you're making a decision, think about any decision. How do I look from the outside? Right? Don't get wrapped up in yourself, because in life you're inconsequential. So and I love you guys, whoever.
Well, thank you again. I really appreciate it.
That's cool.